Hello everyone and welcome to SkillCapped. I'm Notorious Dub and today we're going to be going over everything that you need to know about eco rounds. And we're going to be covering everything from goals for the round, how to play the round, shotguns, pistols, saving for an AWP, and more. But before we get into that, make sure that you take a second to hit that subscribe button and turn those bells on, because we here at SkillCapped have a ton more comprehensive premium guides coming your way that you're going to want to stay up to date with so you can stay ahead of the pack. And as always, make sure you let me know in the comments below if you want to see more videos like this or what you want to see next. Alright, so first and foremost, we have to establish what our goals are when we're actually deciding to eco. So the eco round is essentially a sacrificial round, and on the most basic level, the goal is just to build yourself and your team enough economy so you can all buy together on the next round and improve your chances of actually winning. Here you're going to want to go without expensive weapons and usually go without armor, that way you can afford to buy the next round. And you can start to establish an economy for you and your team so you can actually start to play around it. Now, most people already know this about eco rounds, and it's honestly the reason you see so many teams just run it down on their eco round, because they essentially just want to get the round over with. But the eco round is so much more important than that, which is why it's so important to implement this next goal. You need to be doing economic damage to the enemy team, because enemies having a bad buy is often just as good as your team having a good buy. And that's not to mention that once your team loses a buy round and then gets flawless on your eco the next round, you're going to have to win the next 3 rounds in a row to do enough economic damage to actually put the enemies on an eco round themselves. We also have to realize that on these eco rounds, our goal isn't to win the round. Obviously, winning the round would be great, but playing how you normally play to win rounds will almost guarantee that you will lose on an eco. A general rule of thumb is that on an eco round, you should be looking to trade 1 for 1 whenever you can, because trading 1 for 1 lets your team control a gun. And a 1 for 1 and then trading a gun is not a fair trade, so it actually puts your team at an advantage compared to what you had originally. So ultimately, when you eco round, you should be looking to save as much money as possible while still trying to kill 2 or more members of the enemy team. And I'll be going over specific goals for attack and defense later on in the video, but you want to save as much money and build up your economy as much as you can while still trying to break down the enemies. Next up though, I want to talk about when you should be buying for your team on eco rounds. And this does also rely on how much money the enemy team is sitting on as well, which I'll explain in a bit, but this is so important because most of the time, your entire team having better pistols is way more important than you forcing up a rifle by yourself. So first things first, even though you have a rifle, no one on your team has the money to help you in a fight. So if you manage to die, you've essentially just lost your team your only win condition for the entire round. So when it comes down to it, most of the time when you're going to be eco rounding, someone on your team is going to have way more money than everyone else. And this is when your team should be requesting ghosts and sheriffs so you have enough firepower around the entire team to do economic damage you can trade out and maybe even sneak around from the other team. With that being said though, if your team has enough money to buy themselves pistols, it can be very effective to hero buy a Spectre or a rifle just to give your team that extra win condition. And this is especially effective if the enemy team has a bad economy to pair with that. You should think of your eco round buys as an investment. You're investing to get kills to make the rest of the game easier by putting your enemies at an economic disadvantage while you're also saving money yourself. Because getting kills on eco rounds reduces the money the other team has to work with on the next round when you're buying. And it may take a few rounds for you to actually break through their economic barrier, but once you do, the rounds start getting much easier because they have to be a little careful with what they're buying. I do feel like I have to mention here though, forcing up a hero rifle when the enemy team has seemingly endless money is far worse than buying a hero rifle on eco when you're still fighting for that economy control. The enemy team has rounds and rounds worth of money, so saving your extra credits for an AWP or even a second buy round in a row is usually more beneficial because it takes a major swing to shift the economy at that point. Ultimately though, on eco rounds, you want to make sure your team has something to work with. And while classic only rounds are sometimes necessary, they should be looked at as a last resort because it turns into a throwaway round very quickly. Next up, we have one of the most important questions of the video. It's how to save for an AWP. I've seen quite a few people who are great with an operator, but they always want to buy with the team, and sometimes it seems like you just can't get anything going and you never actually save up enough to get that AWP in your hands. And while this is great team play and you should always be buying with your team no matter what, there are a few tips to help you get to that operator more often. So early rounds is when we want to look at, and the 2 numbers you need to know are 2,500 and 1,900. This is the amount of money you need to be able to afford an operator and heavy armor or light armor respectively after you win a round. Now this is usually going to make you end up missing out on vital utility, but getting to that third round operator is the most important because you have 4 other people on your team who should be buying something to help you get through these rounds. So hypothetically you win round 1, and you're left with 3,000 credits minimum, and you buy a Marshal with no armor. As long as your team is buying with you on round 2, then you have enough firepower to be effective versus their eco round. And you have the economy backing you up to get you to that 4,900 threshold whenever you win that round. This gives you enough money for your operator on round 3 when the economy is equalized and it's full buy versus full buy. But you do have to keep in mind, if you get more kills, then you're going to be able to afford more utility, so make sure you're going for those frags on those eco rounds. Alright, so next up we have to talk about how to specifically play the eco round. And there are different ways to play on each side of the map, but we're going to break it down starting with attacker side. Attacking side ecos are the ones I see done the most wrong the most often. And that's because most people just want to get the round out of the way, so they just run it down. But eco round is the most important round to play in pairs because winning your 1v1 is way less likely when you're rocking a classic or a ghost against the enemy's rifle. So make sure you have someone close by or walking in front of you so you can trade each other out when the fighting actually happens. And this goes for the entire round. If you get into a fight and trade 1-for-1, stop pushing. Back off and go to your team because you're alone now. Now if you manage to grab the gun, then that's even better, but don't get greedy and work as a team. Also keep in mind, if someone on your team bought a hero rifle or a hero gun, don't press your luck solo or duo and try to take fights. Just let the person with the gun take the fights. If they win, then great, go help them. But if they lose, that's when you want to start taking your own fights. But let the person with the best chance to win the fight first. Now, general things you want to be doing on attacker side is to sit back and wait for defender pushes, because everyone in the game can see how much money you have, so having to save often prompts defending teams to push aggressively for those kills. If that doesn't work, you want to push up aggressively with your partner and look for those isolated battles. And then if all else fails, and only then, you want to group up as 5 and rush the site. Because while it's most likely that you're going to get mowed down by a rifle when you're running onto site, there is a chance that you overwhelm the site with sheer numbers and you manage to steal that round. But when it comes to defender side, the eco round looks a lot different. Now my personal favorite strategy is the shorty holds. Because when I'm attacking, I know every enemy eco round, I could peek around a corner and have a shorty waiting there to one-shot me. And with how easy it is to one-shot someone with a shorty, it's honestly a pretty good strategy to have your entire team post up in close angles with shotguns or in pairs. This way you're not fighting for map control at long angles. You're instead waiting on a misstep from the enemy team that lets someone pick up a kill and a gun because the other team thought that they were safe. Now another great strategy is to group up as 5 on defender side and rush an area. You're going to want to use your utility to stop you from peeking too many angles at once, but the goal is to get in the face of the spread out attackers and get those kills. It's just like rushing the site as an attacker, but instead you're going to be rushing a spot on the map as a defender. And the tricky part about this though, is once you get the kills and the enemies are rushing to a bomb site because you left it open, stop the aggressive pushing. You have to reset, play retake, and correctly work the round. Now these rounds work so often in the beginning, but they go so bad so quickly just as often because you continue to push to your death because you want to get behind the enemies and frantically stop them from taking the site, when instead you could just pick up the guns and fight out the round on an even playing field. Either way though, the most important thing when playing defender ecos is to be unpredictable because catching the enemies off guard can win you rounds that you had no business winning anyway. And then to end off the video, I wanted to talk a little bit about the 2 types of eco rounds that are the most common, the shotgun eco and the pistol eco. Now starting with the shotgun eco, we have the Bucky, the Judge, and the Shorty. These all have different uses and different spots where they're going to be the most effective. Now the Shorty is going to be the most common as it's only 200 credits, and it's perfect for those close 90-degree angles that enemies have to walk deep into multiple angles to clear. Something like hookah on bind. Whenever you walk into hookah as an attacker, it's impossible to clear the left or the right side without exposing yourself to the other angle. These types of angles are where the shorty shines because they have to commit to the peak entirely and they're right in your face, making that one-shot potential the highest it can possibly be. Then we have the Bucky. The Bucky is going to be the least common for eco rounds, but it's the only shotgun able to hold down certain areas of the map. Areas like A side on split. Now playing an area like underneath balcony and right clicking everyone near the ultimate orb is a dominant strategy because it's so easy to get a one-shot right click from that distance. Now with the Bucky, you want to be playing close to medium range angles while still having something to retreat behind because it does have a slow fire rate. And then finally we have the Judge. the multi-killing shotgun. And while it's very expensive for a shotgun, the kill potential it has is very underrated. Now with the Judge, you want to be playing very close angles that the enemy is likely to rush very quickly throughout the round. These are areas like Garage on Haven or B Heaven on Split. The damage output of the Judge allows for rounds to go very bad if the enemies push into areas like this too quickly. So the goal is to bait the enemies into rushing while you're sitting there playing an off angle and spray and pray until everyone dies or they manage to kill you. And ultimately, I think the reason that shotguns are so effective as an eco strategy is that there is a shotgun that works well for every site of every map. And with how cheap the options are, picking up on eco rounds becomes so much easier. And finally, we have the pistol eco rounds. And first and foremost, the classic isn't a bad weapon if you're forced to use it, but honestly, it should be used just like a shorty. On eco rounds specifically, you should be playing very close and tight angles, hoping that the enemy comes into a right click headshot and you can pick up an easy kill. And then we have the Frenzy. The Frenzy is actually very underrated on eco rounds because the sheer damage output is very nice when you only need to pick up one kill and you're going to use that person's weapon anyway. This makes close off angles and flanks pretty easy to pull off, and if the enemy misses their headshot if they see you, the Frenzy can kill them in no time. And then we have the Ghost. It's the most popular pistol in the game because it can do a little bit of everything. It has the fire rate to do decent up close, the damage and accuracy to trade at range, and a 105 headshot to make its mid-range pretty powerful. So it's all around the go-to choice. If you're not quite sure what you're going to be getting into that round, you can always go with the Ghost and be safe. And then finally we have the Sheriff. This gun does massive damage if you can click on heads, and you can turn the tide of an entire round by itself. The Sheriff is great for isolating duels and equalizing the playing field because of the headshot damage. Now the Sheriff is the only gun that can challenge a rifle consistently. So while you're not going to want to buy the Sheriff to group as 5 and run it down at the attackers, buying a Sheriff and taking a 1v1 is a pretty good eco round option. Just be sure that you're within 30 meters so you get that one-shot headshot potential instead of doing 145 damage instead. Now if there's anything that you learned from this video, I hope it's that you start taking eco rounds seriously. I see too many people throwing away eco rounds because they just want to get back to their Phantom. But playing an eco round correctly and getting that thrifty to pop up after the round does wonders for the rest of the game and honestly completely shifts the momentum of the game. But let me know in the comments if any of this is helpful for you, and be sure to let us know what you want to see next as well. Before you head out though, make sure you hit that subscribe button with the bells turned on so you can stay up to date with all of our comprehensive premium guides and you can stay ahead of the pack. As always, we here at SkillCapped want to thank you for watching and spending this little bit of your day with us. Now I'm Notorious Dub, signing off.